The AAA video game bubble has burst. I don't think this is true entirely, but I know why they're saying it. Here we go. Let's watch.
I think it is simply because there used to be a time where AAA meant that people assumed quality, and so people would buy the game based off of the studio, and that was exclusive to AAA studios before, and that's no longer the case. That's why the AAA bubble has burst.
Watch it.
The video game industry is currently in the thralls of a paradox.
Yeah.
For players, it could be argued we're in one of the greatest times for gaming.
I agree.
There's incredible breadth of choice across consoles, handhelds, and PCs.
Best time to be a video gamer. Absolutely. Best time to be a gamer for a few years now with amazing indie games. Like it started in 2016, I think. And since then it's just been banger after banger after banger after banger. Like every year an amazing video game comes out. Not just talking about like AAA. In fact, kind of pretty much exclusively talking about not AAA. But like pretty consistently, there's been at least one or two really good video games coming out each year that everybody's playing and everybody's having a good time with. And sure, there's still the CODs and the FIFAs and the Concords and the slop content that nobody really fucking likes. But like at the same time, I can't really talk shit. I'm a slop YouTuber mostly.
He's made ever more accessible through gaming subscription services like Xbox Game Pass and PlayStation Plus. But from an industry perspective, things could not be more dire. More and more studios seem to be closing, original IPs are being scrapped mid-development.
Well, I mean, like, this is, the thing is that, I mean, bro, she was so, why didn't they not, they really should have just made that go, damn, that's, what the fuck?
They did make her protagonist of her own thing. The problem with Nova isn't that she's hot, right? The problem with Nova is that she doesn't belong in StarCraft. Overall, StarCraft is a very down-to-earth, very gritty franchise. And when in not even Heart of the Swarm, but when in the later parts of Legacy of the Void, it started to get very mythological, very high fantasy in space almost. People started to not like the story as much, and they kind of started to peel back, and nobody really liked it. And Blizzard kind of tried to go the other way and give us a gritty, almost noir-esque campaign with Nova, with Covert Ops, but because they still wanted to do the strategy thing, which was their mistake, if they wanted to make a noir-esque Covert Ops campaign with Nova as the protagonist, they should have just made a single-player game, right? I think that would have been far more interesting if they had just given us StarCraft Ghost, right? That would have been the best solution, I think. And I think most people would have liked to see StarCraft Ghost, like a first-person shooter where you play as Nova. It would have been sick, right? With Blizzard's resources nowadays, they could have done something really really cool, but they chose to do Covert Ops, and it was really poorly received.
And so anyway, I think that's because the studios were over.
Not to mention that's the. I don't think that's the Nova from StarCraft. I don't think this is StarCraft 2 Nova. I think this is Heroes of the Storm Nova. I could be wrong though. It could be like a promotional picture from StarCraft 2. I don't know.
For hiring. They have a bunch of people in there. Like, this is a big problem that I think a lot of people in corporate have, is that they just bring in more and more people. Just more and more people. And eventually you have like such a large component of the actual like of the company that doesn't actually contribute to the product. Like, they're not doing anything for the product. They're not improving the product. They're not making it better. They're not even helping the product. They're just there.
Where still, a lot of the times, those people who are just there then go out of their way to make the company look bad by picking fights with consumers or just overall being insufferable.
IPs are being scrapped mid-development, and vast legions of game developers, programmers, artists, and animators have been cut loose. To put it simply,
I mean, look, can't we just talk about the fact, like, who the fuck wants to do this?
I mean, this looks like a pretty cool, like, NPC faction. I wouldn't want to play as them, but I wouldn't mind interacting with them, right? Like if this was like a real-time strategist or a shooter game, and these were like generic enemy goons, I'd find them pretty cool.
What is this, like in between
They
like
look pretty cool to shoot at.
a Pride rally, Burning Man, and Mad Max? What the fuck is this?
It's like I said, they look fun to shoot at.
Like what kind of style? It doesn't make any sense.
But I do agree that the style is stupid. Like how did you get those feathers when clearly you're like in a Mad Max-esque thing? Like yeah. But still, it's clearly just meant to delineate them as being part of a faction, so whatever. But yeah, it is. I get what he's getting at because he's right. Like I took one look at this and I went, oh, that's meta shit. That's metagame shit. That's to delineate them as part of the red faction.
It's weird.
And then most likely the next group is going to have something similar, but it's going to be blue or green or whatever, right? Yeah, I get it. I get it. I understand. I agree.
Yeah, who does this?
Bad designers.
Animators have been cut loose. To put it simply, the AAA video game bubble has finally burst.
Yeah.
I think it's like I said. I think it burst a while ago. I think it's been burst. I think it burst in 2016.
Across the past 2 years,
and I'm throwing out that year like randomly. Just it's been gone.
23,000 jobs in the video game industry were lost. With a
like ever since people started responding to a video game from a major AAA studio with another game by X, like another Ubisoft game, another Assassin's Creed game, another Call of Duty game, another FIFA game. As soon as that started happening, and then at the same time people go, oh my god, awesome, another Dark Souls game, right? As soon as that started happening, the bubble was gone.
A staggering 6,000 in January 2024 alone. Over 30 video game development studios have ceased operations, including Arcane Austin, Volition, and most recently Firewalk Studios.
You want to know what
every single one of them
common
deserved.
is that they're
every single one of them deserved to be shut down. If I go to a burger joint and I order a burger and the burger is like unfinished, uncooked, and like just not good, I'm never going back there, and that place is going to shut down. The same should go to video game studios. If you can't put out good games, your studio needs to shut down, because it needs to send that message to everybody else. Hey, this doesn't work. Try again with something else. Yes, absolutely. I think it's a good thing that these studios shut down. They had the wrong vision. They had the wrong leadership. They had the wrong philosophy. Everything about them was wrong. They needed to be shut down so that somebody else could take their spot, and maybe that somebody else will have a good vision. And if they don't, they'll get shut down too, and somebody else will come in until somebody who has a good vision will get a good opportunity, and they'll put out a game that everybody's going to like. This is the way.
Western development studios. Capcom is hiring people, and
it has nothing to do with Westernness or Easternness. It has nothing to do with that. Western studios are going through something that Eastern studios went through already, but they went through it at the time of the Atari, and Western studios are going through it now.
And
there is a reason. There is a reason that in the East we only hear about 2 or 3 major studios, whereas in the West there's tons, right? There's a reason for that. It's because way back when, I'm not a historian, so I can't like give you exact dates, but way back when, there was the Atari, there was the Sega, there was all this stuff, right? And they tried to put out slot that nobody liked in hopes of just getting sales. They tried to bully people into buying the games because, come on, you like Sega, you should buy all these games. And people said no, and so the studios died. And then eventually they got replaced by somebody who understands the way forward. And that's why we have Nintendo, who, despite all of the shitty things that they do, people still buy the games because the games are good. And Sony, who, despite how shitty they are as like a company, how shitty their representation here in the West is, people still buy the games because the games are good, right? That's what happens. This is basically a time of strife, and the people who come out of the time of strife alive are the strongest of the bunch. It is survival of the fittest. It's something that needs to happen. It's something that will happen no matter how much we try to stop it from happening. And we're just watching as it happens to all these AAA studios. And the people who rise to the top are going to be the cream of the crop.
Software increased their wages. The problem is that AAA Western gaming studios are infested
Wait, what
with
was that?
wages. The problem.
Alana Pierce is leaving Sona Santa Monica. I think she should return to her hometown to be with family and consult remotely for work. I mean, probably.
Is that
if that's true.
AAA Western gaming studios are infested with a like.
I was reading that because you probably can't see it because my face is in the way, but yeah, somebody in Asmongold's comments.
3 or 4 different types of rot that they seemingly can't get rid of, and it's killing their games.
Yeah, that. It's like I said, this is something that needs to happen. It's going to happen no matter how much you try to stop it. Don't worry about it.
The fact is that Monster Hunter is going to be a AAA game, and it's going to be massively fucking successful.
Yes, but the bubble being burst does not mean that every single AAA game is bad now. It just means that being a AAA game no longer means that it's good. There was a time where that was true, right? Assassin's Creed. Those first 4 games were peak, right? And then it fell off the cliff. Call of Duty, Battlefield, all of these franchises that nowadays are just seen as slop, are seen as just like, ugh, another one of these games. They used to be amazing, right? But the bubble has burst. Being a AAA title no longer means that it's good. It just means that it's a game with a big budget. And in my opinion, I think if a game has a big budget, I think if a game has all this development time, all these resources, and then it comes out and it's a 5 out of 10, it's bad. And it should fail. And it shouldn't be bought. Because it's demanding a much higher price from the consumer, both in terms of money, but also in terms of time and space investment, because most of these games are like 100 gigabytes to 200 gigabytes. And then they come out and it's like, what the hell, man? This is garbage. Veilguard compared to Baldur's Gate 3, right? Compare the two. Like people like to say, "Oh, BioWare is just a small company, the same size as Larian." That's not true. Larian is big now. It wasn't when it started with Baldur's Gate 3, because it started Baldur's Gate 3 in 2017. It only started to really get big in 2020, right? So this whole bullshit of AAA studios, like, yeah, the bubble has burst. It no longer means anything. It just means you have a big budget. You can spend like $250,000 on a game, creating a game, and it'll still come out and be garbage. Because you're garbage. Because you can't make games worth a dick.
Path of Exile 2 is a AA game that is better than basically any AAA game.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Let's be real. Like, it is Western American, especially American, and a lot of European game developers. They are the ones that have no fucking idea what they're doing. That's the real problem.
What's worse is this trend only shows signs of continuing rather than diminishing. So how did we get here? Well, some analysts have concluded these closures and redundancies are a necessary remedy to companies having overextended themselves.
Yes, absolutely. You do not need 650 people working on a video game. You need like 100 at the most if it's like a really big game.
In response to inflated demand in the market during the COVID-19 pandemic. While that's undeniably a factor, that's just one of many issues that have been gestating for years within the AAA project bubble. Just 5 years ago, AAA projects' average budget ranged from $50 to $150 million. Yep. Today, the minimum average is $200 million.
Jesus.
Call of Duty's new benchmark.
So it more than doubled or quadrupled in
Just think about it this way. And the problem with that, by the way, is that if you spend $200 million making a game and then you spend another $100 million advertising that game, which is it's the average, it's the norm, it's the mean, whatever the hell you want to call it, for when a AAA studio is advertising a game, that's $300 million. You need to sell upwards of 4 million games, upwards of 4 million copies just to make most of that back. And for a game to be a commercial success, I think somebody explained it to me like a while ago, but it's like you need to make twice what you invested back in order to have good growth, right? These games are not able to be successful commercially because they're too expensive to make. And because they're too expensive to make, the reason for that is because of, first of all, this level of graphical fidelity, which in 90% of cases is not necessary. You do not need it. That's number one. But also, the millions and millions and millions of dollars that get thrown around for consultancy firms because they want to know whether or not they should add a dash of pink to a character's hair in a shooter. And the answer, I can give it to you for free. It's no, you shouldn't. You want to know why? Because there's not a single pink-haired person on Twitter who gives a shit about this who is able to pick up a gun and fire it in a shootout. There's not one. They do not exist. I'm sure there's a bunch of them who go, oh, look at me, I own a gun, and it's like, haha, I'm so hard, I'm so tough. It's like, no, not a single one of them. Not a single one of them. Because the people who are actually capable of doing the shit that happens in these video games are people who dedicate themselves to that, are people who have a devotion to combat, a devotion to weaponry, a devotion to the art that they are implementing in the game, which in this case would be fighting and shooting and blowing things up. Those people have shaved heads. Those people have tattoos of skulls. Those people do not have pink hair. Those people are not in wheelchairs. Those people are not going around making victims out of themselves. 90% of what these consultancy firms do is make a game unbuyable.
5 years.
And you're paying millions for it.
Well, where's that money going?
I just said it. It goes into graphical fidelity, which is meaningless in most cases, and it goes into consultancy firms. Not to mention, a lot of the times, it goes into top-tier voice actors who have no business being there. They just don't. No, you should not be paying millions to a voice actor to be in your video game when they're going to talk for like 30 minutes and the video game is meant to be a shooter, right? Nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. If it's an RPG, yes, you should invest in voice actors. But you shouldn't just invest in really big voice actors. You should invest in a diverse cast of voice actors. It is literally like, do not find yourself in the same situation as Skyrim. You don't want that. You don't want to have 10 really good voice actors. It is much better to, instead of having, 10 out of 10 characters, voice actors, right? 10 guys who are just 5 stars. Objectively worse than having 30 guys who are 3 stars. Objectively worse. They need to be okay, but so long as they're not terrible, it's fine. And in fact, if you got like 1 or 2 guys who are like terrible and who freak the fuck out and who die like, it's perfectly fine. People find that funny. People will clip it. People will post it on the internet and go, haha, this is so funny. I love this game, right? Do not overspend. This is something that everybody knows and nobody talks about, and it's so stupid.
Million, with Activision admitting in the Competition and Market Authority's report on AAA development.
And also, here's another thing. I'm gonna just say it.
Wait. We have to make so much content for Call of Duty that we can't even lean on one lead studio anymore. Activision was quoted as saying in the report, now we need almost 1.5 lead studios for each annual COD. That kind of bandwidth pressure is forcing us to use outsourcers more and more, and it's not changing anytime soon. I assume that's what's here. Why are you making annual CODs? You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't. You should be making one COD, finishing it, putting it out. This thing where like AAA should not be trying to make slop. You can't do that. You're not able to. The game is too expensive. You can't make slop. Slop gets fewer views per hit. All right? Slop hits like a wet rag, but it hits a lot of times. Okay? You should not be worried about slop. Shouldn't be making that. You should be making high quality video games that every time that they hit, they go, they make people go, oh my God, this is so cool. This is so much better than everything else. That's what you need to be doing. But instead, we're out here dealing with annual cards. And it's meaningless. A card came out like this past month, came out in November, I think. Nobody gave a shit. Some people mentioned that they were trying to play the new one and they couldn't because it was ass. Really? This is what you want out of COD? This is what you want out of Call of Duty. Activision, the game that you are known for. This is what you want out of it? You want it to be a game that comes out, nobody notices except for the people who are really into Call of Duty, and then people just go, wow, this is a terrible experience. That's what you want? Because if the answer is no, stop putting out a game every single fucking year. You do not need to do that.
You know who plays games like this? Guys play games like this.
Yes.
They do.
And they do not want to play as this character. They would much rather play as this character. He's got the kit, he's got a cool ass mask, he's got a fat ass. Like this is what the guys want to play as.
Girls don't play games like this. Some do, sure. But
yeah, a minority. This is like people who go, actually, I'm a girl and I play war games, so girls play war games all the time. It's like, no, you are a minority. If you ever go to a war game store, if you ever go to a video game store, if you ever go to any of these places, you would know that they are a minority. And it's okay to be a minority. Nobody's mad at you for being a minority. Do not pretend to be a majority because you are not. It's okay.
This is mainly a guy game.
Yes.
And you need to stop putting girl boss characters in games that are made for men. Because there's a big difference. There are games that are made for men and games that are made for women.
And by the way, a girl boss character is this, right? This is different from a competent female character. Okay? Space Marine 1 and 2 had the Imperial Guard led by women, both times. Both of those times, the women were very competent. In neither one of them were they girl bosses.
Every other form of media has this and acknowledges it, but somehow in video gaming, we have to pretend like it's not real.
Well, it's because, and here's something that a lot of people have been noticing, but not a lot of people enjoy talking about. Video games have always been something that draws in marginalized people, right? And for a very long time, gay people were marginalized for different reasons, right? But the people who played video games have always been marginalized. And a lot of the times they were marginalized for playing video games. In fact, I still remember growing up, I was bullied for playing video games. And now I'm seeing the same people who would bully me for playing video games demanding not just a seat at the table, but to have the authority to change the table. Like, the people who want this type of character in video games are the exact type of people who 10, 15 years ago were bullying gamers. So this idea that these people want to feel marginalized, and so they go into video games, they demand that it be changed for them because they're marginalized in their minds, and now they're sitting here demanding these changes, and not just demanding the changes, but demanding that you like the changes. When originally you came to video games because you were marginalized everywhere else, and now you're in video games being marginalized out of your own space. And if you go somewhere else, they'll follow you and push you out of there again. It's the same shit that's happening everywhere. It happens everywhere. It happened with video games. It happens with adventure role playing games like D&D. It happens with war games. Every time these people want to feel marginalized because they're a minority, and so they demand all of this additional attention. And by the way, I am strictly talking about the worst examples of the minorities. All right, and I'm not talking about like LGBT people at all. I'm not. This is not referring to them. This is referring to the people who choose to feel marginalized and who make themselves out to be marginalized when they're not.
It is obviously fucking real. So they keep making content for, quote, everybody.
Except they're making content for like 1 to 5% of people. and it's not even really 1 to 5% of people, it's less than that because it's only for the people like themselves. And they're a very small minority. They're just really fucking loud. And we all wish they weren't, let's be honest. We all wish they'd shut the fuck up.
Nobody wants it. Girl Bros, yeah, it's ridiculous. Girl Boss is fine if it's Demon's. Well, yeah, but the Resident Evil lady, like that, that's who he's talking about. She was really hot. That's the main thing. And
it's not even that. It's that she wasn't an asshole. She was there doing her job. That's what people want. It doesn't matter if she's hot. Her being hot is gravy. What matters is that you show up and you're doing your job. That's it. That's all people give a shit about. If you show up and you're just doing your part, you're not incompetent, you're not an asshole, you're just doing your part, nobody's going to get mad at the
also,
character.
She was like the villain and like it wasn't even you.
Yeah.
What's that, Stellar Blade? Yeah, Stellar Blade character is really hot. Like Stellar Blade is a game that's made to appeal to men.
Yeah.
The people that made Stellar Blade made...
And by the way, biggest evidence that video games are a medium for men. Every time that a game comes out where the focus is catering to men, the game sells like hotcakes.
That game, and their target audience were men.
Every time,
girls play Stellar Blade, they like Stellar Blade.
Every single time that a game comes out and caters mostly to men, the game sells like hotcakes. Every single time. Whether that be through sex appeal or through challenge, so Stellar Blade, Wukong, Elden Ring, that sort of thing. Every single time. If it caters to men, either by just being pure fucking badass, Space Marine 2, sex appeal, Stellar Blade, or just a challenge, Elden Ring, Wukong, all that stuff, it's always going to sell well. Because, guess fucking what? That's what people want.
It's a guy game.
Oh, and in the case of Baldur's Gate 3, I guess Baldur's Gate 3, yeah, like the exploration side of it, I wouldn't even say that Baldur's Gate 3 catered specifically to guys. I think it catered to everybody because everybody enjoys like a story like that. And it was just a really, really fun story with a really cool world with a lot of exploration, a lot of creativity, and so it appealed to a lot of people. What's the player count of Baldur's Gate 3 right now? 60,000 players.
Sure.
Goddamn.
The Gooners, yeah, absolutely.
And I think that was actually like on a low.
And this is part of the
start of
the
the slope.
AAA like
the 24-hour peak is 74,000.
Western AAA studios have. Is that they do stuff like this? No, this is like what the
Nobody
fuck?
wants to see this. Nobody wants to play this.
Authorities report on AAA development that it now takes the efforts of 1.5 studios just to complete the annual Call of Duty title. But it's far from just Call of Duty facing ballooning costs. In the same CMA report, an anonymous publisher admits that development costs for one of its franchises reached $660 million, with $550 million of marketing costs on top, which makes it a $1.2 billion game.
Wow.
To put that into perspective, Minecraft, the world's best-selling video game of all time, only broke $3 billion last year, and keep in mind that's what it made since it launched way back in 2011.
Yeah.
The realities of these budgets mean entire publishing houses are massively...
To be fair, I could see that data being not completely relevant because of how much merchandise and media that exists that uses the Minecraft IP. You know, it's like...
Okay, but like 95% of these other titles sell negative numbers of merch.
You know, the whole George Lucas.
Like Veilguard. Veilguard had merch. I don't think that Veilguard's merch sold well at all.
Why is he the richest director, right? But I don't know.
Overstretched and are now desperately facing the consequences. If their developers' huge projects don't make money immediately, they gotta go. Sega's sci-fi shooter super game Hyenas was in development at Creative Assembly for 7 years, and just as it was publicly playable...
Well, this is again, like, I have to say, like, I mean, stop making characters with ugly female... Like, if you make a game with... I mean...
Okay,
7 years.
I'm gonna keep it a buck. I know she sucks dick like a crazy person, like straight up. She sucks dick like a maniac. That is not an unattractive woman. She's, you know, she's not skinny, she's slim, she's pretty, she's got the eyeshadow. Like, yeah, she's not unattractive. The problem is, she's not the type of character I want to play as. She's the type of character I think would look really cool as an NPC, not as a character.
And just as it was publicly playable...
Well, this is, again, like, I have to say, like, I mean, stop making characters with ugly female. Like, if you make
She's
a
not
game
ugly.
with an ugly female character, I will automatically assume your game is garbage.
Yes, same thing with like the new Fable. Like, really, you couldn't put a really pretty girl in the trailer? Really? Like, you know people want to see a pretty girl. Why is that not what you put in the trailer?
Because nobody wants that. Women don't want that, and men don't want that.
Yeah, nobody wants to play as an ugly
Straight up. Like,
person. 1 second. What the hell is happening here? Whatever.
I don't even understand how this is even a conversation.
It's a conversation because they don't want to believe it.
First
because, and this is just a true fact, a lot of these people are physically unattractive, and because they turn that into part of their personality, they also become emotionally unattractive. And so they make characters like themselves, both visually, so aesthetically not that pleasing to look at, but also annoying to talk to and insufferable. And so they make these characters like themselves, and so nobody wants to play as that.
time via alpha testing, it was promptly cancelled. The reason? Sega preemptively concluded that Hyenas couldn't make its money back. Blizzard's survival project Odyssey had a similar trajectory.
Yo,
Odyssey
look at this, bro.
He's being with a teddy bear. They want to be Saints Row so bad. Except they want to be the new Saints Row that nobody liked, which is a problem because you're trying to copy something that people didn't like.
This is the most retarded, cringe, millennial shit that I've ever seen.
Yes.
This is so obnoxious and weird. Like, really? Like, I mean, what the fuck is this?
I mean, no, you said it really well, Asman. You said it perfectly. It is the most cringe, millennial, obnoxious shit ever.
Children's game?
A children's game with guns. Get the fuck out of here.
I guess so. It's also just ugly. Yeah, it's just so weird.
It's a bad aesthetic. It's not pleasing to look at. And they
couldn't make its money back.
Stupid.
Blizzard's survival project Odyssey had a similar trajectory. Odyssey would have been the studio's first new IP in 8 years, and given the market's love for games like Minecraft and Rust, such a game...
So stupid. People don't love the genre. People love the communities that have formed around this, right? They don't love the genre. They love Rust. They love Minecraft. There is no market for these games. Stop making these games. They are not successful. We can look at Rust Steam charts and we know that this is not going to be something that you can repeat. It's got 63,000 players right now. And if we look at Minecraft on Steam, and if we look at Minecraft Steam charts, at the time of this video, this is the wrong one, that's Minecraft Legends. Bro, can I get just Minecraft? Minecraft story mode. Minecraft live player count. Minecraft live player count monthly. As of now, it had average monthly plays 170,000. 170,000. That's a lot of people. You're not going to get that. It does not work. It doesn't work that way. You're not going to be able to copy that. Minecraft was a bullseye out of nowhere. It was the first of its kind, pretty much, that did it right. Rust, also kind of the first of its kind to do it really, really well. If you come out and you're as good, people are not going to change games for you. Why? Because they already know Rust. They already have mods in Rust. They already have friends in Rust. You would need to make something better. You're not going to be able to unless you get a team composed of a bunch of Rust players who want to make something even better for themselves and others, which is what happened with PoE, which is why PoE is kicking the shit out of Diablo.
gaming titan should have undoubtedly made waves with this project.
No.
When Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard, though, the project was swiftly killed with little reason publicly given beyond inconveniences in switching engines to increase player count on the server.
Guys,
I'll be honest. This looks dope.
Inconveniences in switching
This
engines
does
to
not.
increase player count on the server.
guys, Overwatch 2 is a joke.
Yes.
Heroes of the Storm was a joke.
No, Heroes of the Storm was good.
Diablo 4 was a joke. You really think this game was good? Like, I mean, why would anybody think this game was good?
The fact that every single Diablo game has been bad, even though we have a literal blueprint of what people want in PoE and in Diablo 2. Because I mean, if we go into we can go onto Twitch and just look up, because ARPGs are a type of game that draws in a lot of viewership, right? We can look at it directly. So Diablo 2 has 900 viewers right now. Diablo 3 has 40, and Diablo 4 has 1.7 thousand. The fact that Diablo 4 doesn't even double Diablo 2's viewership, even though it's the more recent title that was incredibly commercialized, that's the most casual friendly, that has all these things, should tell you something. At the same time, Path of Exile 2, a game that's not even out, has 23,000 views. And Path of Exile 1 has the same amount of views as Diablo 2. And that's just viewership, right? Let's look at the actual charts. Diablo 2 charts. This is for streams. Live player count for Diablo 2. Diablo 2 has about 50k players, roughly. About. Diablo 4, live player count and statistics. Let the page load. It's sitting pretty at less than half of that. That's a problem. That's a problem. You should not be looking at this as if it's a success story, because it's not. It's not a success story. Your game is bad. And on Steam, which is in my opinion a much more reliable metric, on Steam Diablo 4 has 7,000 players versus Diablo 2's 50,000 players. It's like, yeah, Diablo has been getting worse and worse. And if we look at Path of Exile on Steam, the charts, it's got 14,000. It shouldn't have that. It's an indie game. And by the way, like the peak is 17,000. So it's actually close to the peak. And apparently there's a spike happening right now. Not sure why. Probably something to do with PoE 2. But it's like, if we look at the all-time peak of PoE 2, it's in the 200,000s, whereas Diablo 4 is in the 50,000s. Like, you cannot make a new game without having passion. You cannot make a new game in a series without having passion for what came before. You cannot make a revamp on a series without having passion for that series or genre. You can't do this. This is art. You are selling art. You cannot sell art if you don't give a shit about the art. And the problem that we all know is the case is that nobody at Blizzard gives a shit about the art anymore. When they were making the Diablo 4 presentations, they had two chicks playing the game. Neither one of them knew what they were doing. They didn't know their characters. Their characters were bad. They were taking fucking minutes to take down like a handful of enemies. And it's ridiculous. Any ARPG player would look at that and go, wow, this game looks boring as hell. And it's why these games fail.
I mean, really, like, why are we assuming that it was this great game?
Oh, we're not.
HOTS was fun? No, it wasn't. If it was fun, more people would have played it.
No, actually, I think HOTS's failure was two things. It came out at a time where League of Legends had the market in a chokehold, and the commercialization that they did was wrong. Instead of trying to get MOBA players to play it, so League of Legends players and all that, they got RTS players to play it. So they got StarCraft 2 players, they got Warcraft 3 players, and they got a few WoW players playing it. None of these people, none of these three groups of people are going to stay in the MOBA genre. And in the same way, none of their audience is going to be interested in that MOBA genre because they're interested in RTSs and MMORPGs. And then when immediately after that initial period where they spent a ton of money on marketing to the wrong audience, and that didn't immediately pay off, they decided, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to ditch this game. And they very quickly started to tone down the updates and tone down the content of Heroes of the Storm until there was none left, and people lost the interest.
Guys, I understand it's popular to say like, oh, I like this game that's not popular anymore. No, there's a reason why they stopped promoting it because nobody played the game because it wasn't fun.
It was wrong. It was commercialized wrong because it was a fun game.
These examples of the current AAA publishing cull reflect a deep-rooted fear to engage with anything new and original. Publishers perhaps more risk-averse than ever to anything new and original. Publishers.
What game is this? This looks sick. Wait, is this
perhaps more risk-averse than ever to stray out of their established IP safety bars. But even well-known IP that could be worth millions in sales and revenue is being left to rot. Despite owning infamous Jak and Daxter.
Please say Killzone.
Killzone, Resistance.
Yes! So fucking true.
And they've already said multiple times, like, we're not gonna make a new Killzone, which is a good thing, because if they did, it'd be ass.
I know!
And Sly Cooper, to name a few entries in PlayStation's sprawling dormant library, Sony CFO Hiroki Totoki recently claimed the company lacks enough original IP to consolidate itself as a true gaming powerhouse.
Yeah. It's fucking so stupid. This is the second game. I had this one.
You talking to him?
What Totoki may mean is that Sony's older catalog of library IP does not fit the mold of what every publisher has been mindlessly chasing for the better part of the...
See, like, Killzone should be the American version of Stalker.
Oh, yeah.
It should be, like, in between Stalker and Space Marine 2.
That'd be sick.
Killzone was great, by the way. Yeah, that's where it should be. And it's just not there. Killzone's trash. It was really fun back whenever it came out. It was like 2005, something like that.
And I never played it. I never had a PlayStation, but like the stuff I've seen of that game is absolutely fucking metal, and the soundtrack is fucking awesome, dude.
The next big live service money printer.
Yeah.
What is this?
I never played
It's
this.
difficult to imagine much fanfare for a Sly.
Those are not good last words, but those are such great last words.
Cooper reboot, where Bentley and Murray are purchased to play, grand heists or season pass bonuses, and worlds are delivered half-baked instead of fully formed. It's undeniable that on some level the video game market has changed forever because of this live service model. New video games don't just have to compete with new rivals, but somehow find space in an increasingly crowded...
Bullshit.
Yeah, no they don't. No the fuck they don't. Because here's the thing. People who play live service games, they play one, maybe two live service games, and they don't play anything else. You are never going to be competing for that person's time, ever. What you need to be doing is compete inside of your own genre. If you are making an RPG, you need to compete with other RPGs. If you are making a shooter, compete with other shooters. If you're making a live service, compete with other live services of the same genre. Stop trying to compete with every single game in the market. It doesn't work that way. A guy who only plays first-person shooters is not going to pick up your fucking ARPG. A guy who wants to play Dragon Age is not going to play God of War. It doesn't work that way.
Dragon Age. Even though this game didn't sell well, Armored
It's so
Core
like
6.
dick. I need more content for Armored Core 6. I cannot stress enough. Please, FromSoft, give me a content drop. I want more PvE content. Give me a horde mode. Give me challenge. I need more. More, please.
Let's see.
All my mechs are fucking waiting,
What else do we
rusting
have?
away. Like I have beaten the shit out of fucking Snail on the Balteus mech so many goddamn times. I hate that fucking fight. I love doing it. The guy is so bullshit. All his attacks are super hard to fucking dodge and they hit like fucking trucks. I've done every single fight in that game so many times. I need more. Please.
Installed
or some way to play with friends. Like something. Please. Begging.
a lot of games. Dragon's Dogma 2.
Yeah.
Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. They had
All
a
of these
couple
are
of
completely
updates and they
different.
stopped.
All of these are completely different, and none of them are competing against each other's time because it just doesn't work that way.
What else do we have?
What the fuck is Kill Knight?
Elden Ring. Metaphor. There's another one. Yeah, Metaphor. Right there. So...
Oh, it's a Vampire Survivors type game. Okay.
Bullshit.
Yeah, it's complete bullshit.
This idea that every game...
It's complete BS, and the only people who believe that are people who are completely outside of the medium.
Game has to be live service. Just total fucking bullshit.
Yeah. Nobody inside the medium believes it. No gamer believes that. No developer who knows what they're doing believes that. Nobody. No one inside of the medium believes it. It's a marketing exec opinion to have.
Dominated by decade-old titles like Fortnite and Grand Theft Auto Online.
Because
games which will continue to
want to know why Fortnite is so popular? It's because it plays flawlessly.
Yes. I don't like Fortnite. I tried to get into it. It just ain't my thing. Plays amazingly, right? Awesome to watch. Awesome to play. Amazing, right? Flawless gameplay. Not my thing, right? That's the only reason why I don't play it. It's just not my thing. I don't really like the PvP stuff anymore all that much, and that's kind of why I kind of just want to play my video games. If I encounter another player, I would much rather the two of us team up against monsters than for us to be attacking each other. It feels completely fucking retarded. It's part of the reason why I stopped playing Dungeonborn and Darker because I just got sick of having to kill every idiot who bumped into me because they immediately started fucking attacking me, and now I have to kill this idiot. It's like, what's the point of that?
It is such a good game to play. It's it's good in the way that classic WoW is good.
Yes.
Higher player counts than many of the best sellers of the last few years. But live service titles require investment.
Don't forget, League of Legends is still like a major hitter in the live service game industry.
Investment of not just money, but also time to find their audience, neither of which was afforded to Firewalk Studios' Concord.
Get the fuck out of here. I could make a game, advertise it on Twitter, and I get more fucking players than Concord. Get the fuck out of here.
The crew of Concord's North Star will never fly again. The recent fate of Concord's Firewalk Studio serves as a microcosm for the increasingly bleak outlook for the next few years in video game development.
I feel like a lot of these big gaming publications...
And by the way, I say I could make a video game that would include like me learning how to make a video game.
And gaming channels don't want to address the elephant in the room, which were the elephants in the character selection screen on Concord.
Gorgeous fucking argument.
No one wants to play like
Nobody wants to play
between,
as
I don't know.
A fridge and a fat woman with a minigun.
Like somebody on My 600-Pound Life and Doom Guy. They don't want to do that. Nobody wants to play that.
They just want to play
it wasn't appealing at all.
People just want to be Doom Guy.
So, yeah, I'm sorry, but like it's just not gonna like it's just that nobody wanted this. Nobody asked for this, and so the 600-pound Doom Guy. Yeah, exactly right. And
Gorlock the Destroyer.
When these studios keep making games
Jabba the Hutt.
And I'm sorry, but like I know I talk about this a lot. I'm sure people are kind of annoyed by it. But like if I see like some kind of weird like identity politics shit in a game, my probability of wanting to play that game goes down by a lot.
Yeah, it's because a lot of these studios and a lot of the people who quote unquote like this stuff, because I don't believe that there's all that many people who actually like this stuff, because if there were, the games would sell well. They don't understand that if a game is set in a completely different universe from ours with completely different problems, completely different situations, they're not going to have the same cultural awareness as us. They're not going to have the same cultural problems as us. And when you take a fantasy setting that throughout, 15 years of content establishes that nobody really gives a shit if you're gay, straight, lesbian, bi, trans, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's not an issue. We don't care. And then you throw in not just a character who is like that and who is struggling with her identity, but also you throw in modern lingo and modern takes and things that are completely disconnected from, how the world goes, the world in that setting. Like you have a character like Krem in Dragon Age Inquisition who is trans, and there's one conversation about it where the Inquisitor, your character, learns about it, and they go, "Oh, how does that work? What is that like?" And Twitter freaked the fuck out over that because it was a really triggering conversation for them. And I'm sorry, but you're playing as the Inquisitor has no idea what a trans person is. They have never been exposed to it. They have no concept of it. So they're going to ask questions, and they ask questions in the most polite way they can, in the most comprehensive way they can, just trying to understand this other person so that they don't say something that they're going to take issue with, and somehow they're the bad guy because of it. And when you do that, when you listen to the people who believe that, yes, in fact, it is a bad thing when you ask questions, when you listen to those people, you very quickly become unable to write in any way that is real to the world that has been written prior to that moment. It becomes impossible. You can't do it. And because you cannot do it, you lose all of it, right? You lose the reality of the setting. You lose the depth that people want to put into it. You lose all of this ability that people have of keeping a franchise alive just by sheer liking the franchise and wanting to write their own stories in that setting. None of it becomes possible because at the end of the day, you're not actually writing a fanfic for a fantasy setting. You're writing a fanfic for real life, and that doesn't work.
And it's not even because of the identity politics. It's
It's
about the fact that I'm good at recognizing patterns. And I've seen patterns happen a lot where it's, oh, this game is like this. It has this feature. That means it's going to have a bunch of other garbage too.
Yeah.
That's it. That's their focus. Yeah. And it's like,
look at almost all of these more recent games where you can choose your character's pronouns. Now, normally you would think, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing says that being able to choose your character's pronouns is a bad thing. And you'd be completely correct. 100%. You are right. There is nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, almost every single game where they advertise the fact that, yeah, you can choose your character's pronouns. Look at the character creator right here. You have the he, him, or she, her, or they, them. You can choose the one of the three. Instead of choosing male or female, you choose that. And instead of body type, instead of male or female character, you have body type 1 or body type 2. And then the game sucks, or the game is unfinished, or the game lacks content, or the content isn't good, or any other number of things that make the game less fun. That's a problem. That becomes a problem very quickly because people start to recognize that. And now every time that you put pronouns in the game, you are now going to have to deal with people recognizing this pattern and people going, oh, this is going to be bad. And that's not good.
I don't want to see that in a game. I think that's weird. It's exhausting. Yeah, it's fucking weird. And so, like, the studios keep doing this, and like, I don't know how you can look at the releases of these games and the entire media space collectively saying, not collectively, obviously there's people disagree, right? But people saying like we don't want these games with like these like weird modern social issues attached to them. People have been begging, please stop making identity politics part of your video game. Please stop doing it. And they don't stop doing it.
They don't stop because they are convinced that the people who are saying that are the minority, and then nobody buys their game.
And
then the studio fails, and the studio dies, and then they get replaced by somebody else. And eventually, this will happen enough times that it will just stop happening. That's just the way it's going to have to go. This is a trial by fire that AAA studios are going through. The rest of the gaming industry is fine. The rest of the gaming industry is doing so well, but this is just an inferno that's going to have to burn all of these AAA studios that insist on going against their players. And until that stops happening, it's not going to stop happening.
Don't buy the games. It's that simple.
Yeah.
It's the same with movies and TVs. Yeah, people aren't buying them, and that's the reason why you have these foreign developers that are doing so well.
Because they focus on
please stop with body type A and B. It only happens with AAA stuff. Yeah, well, that's why AAA is the ones that are making people that are losing money.
It's like that. It's like that argument of if it's body type 1 and 2, why does body type 2 have to wear a bra? Because body type 2 is a woman. Okay, so say man or woman, or say male or female, right? Everybody knows what that means. So this whole idea of insisting on inclusive language, when all that inclusive language does is exclude 99% of people, it's ridiculous. Nobody likes it.
Do you think they'll wake up? They won't. They're going to have to get fired, and the studios will have to get shut down because you can't get rid of these people. And so it's like an infection.
Yeah.
Like when you get infected with something like this, you just have to cut off the entire arm. That's it. They said they're not going to stop no matter the costs.
They will. They will. They will, because they're not the ones who decide, right? They can choose not to stop, but in the same way that if you have a worm inside you that's eating your vital organs, that worm can choose not to stop, but eventually you're going to go to a doctor. That doctor is going to cut you open. It's going to take the worm out, and it's going to kill the worm, and then it's going to sew you back up, and you're going to go about your day like nothing happened.
Well, I mean, they're going to say that until it costs too much. But either way, that's what happens. And I think that's a huge reason. I mean, like, yeah, Concord was a bad game, sure, but it was also like if you look at the initial reception of the game, if you read the comments, everybody was like super negative about it. And it's the same thing with Dragon Age. And like at a certain point, you can't just pretend that having this massive, overwhelming consumer sentiment doesn't matter. It fucking matters. It obviously fucking matters.
It has to matter.
Of course.
It has to matter, because if it didn't matter, your game would have sold well. Your game would have made numbers. Your game would have been bestseller. Your game would have been Game of the Year. And none of those were the case.
Of course it matters.
Concord was Firewalk's first game, its baby in many ways. An 8-year development bolstered by a Sony acquisition and a reported cash injection of $200+ million. PlayStation reportedly believed it had the next Star Wars-esque franchise on its hands.
Yeah, they did.
But the game struggled significantly across both its beta testing period and launch, and was soon completely shut down by Sony just weeks after it was released.
It gave everybody their money
closed
back
for business shortly thereafter. Concord's downfall happened faster than any other failed game of the live service era.
Don't joke about something like this.
Just a decade earlier, though,
I feel like that happened with a couple of other live service games recently, but it's just
I think Concord was the fastest to fall.
That bad. Like Concord, I feel like was the big one.
A similar disaster was plaguing Blizzard's Diablo 3. The crippling Error 37 message made the game unplayable, and fans worldwide decreed the absolute failure to launch. Soon after, the game's real money auction house left players with a foul taste in their mouth, and Diablo 3's reputation was roasting in the fires. Instead of abandoning it, Blizzard repaired the game, removed the auction house, and then fundamentally upgraded and evolved it to Diablo 3 2.0 with its Reaper of Souls expansion, finally cementing its comeback as a brilliant game.
I don't know that Reaper of Souls was an upgrade across the board. I think that I think that the removal of the real money auction house was a good thing, but I also think that changing the way that the difficulties work so that the difficulties don't really mean anything except for like just an increase in like just an extra percentage of damage and health for monsters. I think that ended up being bad for the game overall, made for a less fun experience.
It's a similar.
Wrong. The reason why Diablo 3 wasn't very good at launch is because the game was completely unbalanced. That's really the reason. There's not a lot to it.
I never played
and
on
they
launch.
did
I only played
no
later.
they put no effort into balancing and making the end game content for the game good.
That is also a problem.
The guy that was like the person who made the game, like one of the directors, like what he went and said is he said, we made the game really hard. So what we did is we just doubled all of the numbers. Like, okay. So, and then because I beat Inferno before it got nerfed. I did. Did not beat it on hardcore like Caparian did, but I did beat it. It was totally broken garbage. There was desyncing issues. The game just functionally did not play well. And this is especially true with every other act besides Act 1. Because Act 1 was in the...
Act 1 was the one they were able to actually, like, make good because it's the one everybody was playing on the early access. I remember that. I played the hell out of it.
Diablo 3 beta, and none of the other acts were tested at all. So you would go through Act 1, and it was this flawless, great experience. And then the moment that you go into Act 2, you would have to be dodging grenades that spawned off screen, and then you would have to be dodging wasps that were invisible.
Yes, because the wasps, if they were thrown at you from off screen, they wouldn't visually spawn in. So they would be flying towards you invisibly, and then they would hit you for like 10 times more damage than anything else in the act. So it was just insane.
It was just total garbage.
Story to what we saw with CD Projekt Red's hard-fought battle to win Cyberpunk 2077 fans back after a disastrous launch. If Concord's alleged $200+ million budget had been lowered and the project direction refocused as a spark for a new universe rather than a big bang, it doesn't seem hard to believe that it could have found an audience with some Blizzard or CDPR-like shepherding from Sony. Many projects that came to Concord could be the medium-sized successes they deserve to be if not for the financial corners these publishers find themselves painted into.
Endless rage!
And really, maybe some publishers should consider steering clear of these financial quarters entirely.
Yes.
Gamers are beginning to wane interest in these monolithic projects. You need only look at a top-rated games of 2024 list, while 2023's award lists were littered with...
It's because Baldur's Gate 3 was a good game and it didn't... Almost every single one of the games that didn't do well had some form of messaging that a lot of people didn't like.
Baldur's Gate 3 had the exact same messaging. It would just wasn't in your face about it. It was present, but it wasn't constantly like going out of its way to tell you about it. And it didn't suck. Also, it was faithful to the franchise and to the franchise of Dungeons and Dragons and to the fans of Dungeons and Dragons, old and new.
Like,
well, that's the old.
If you look at Dragon Age, if you look at Concord, if you look at I feel like those are probably the two biggest ones, right? Baldur's Gate 3 was in early access forever. Yeah, it was.
Yes.
And so Baldur's Gate 3 had a message. Well, Baldur's Gate 3 let you do whatever you wanted, right? That's really it. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, it was very clear that Baldur's Gate 3 wanted to be inclusive. But here's the thing. The difference between Baldur's Gate 3's version of inclusion versus Veilguard's version of inclusion is that in Veilguard, the game was inclusive to LGBT people only, right? The entire cast was written as being gay. The main character barely exists in the story. Like you exist as a vehicle for other characters. Most of the story of one of the characters who is supposedly defined as being a dragon hunter. Most of the time she opens her mouth, first of all, she's being rude to you and the others and telling you about how she doesn't actually hunt dragons. She's just a dragon specialist. She's not a dragon slayer. She's a specialist. She knows about dragons. Okay, we actually need people to hunt dragons, specifically blighted dragons. So why do we need this person who is rude and doesn't mesh well with the team when we already have a Grey Warden and Grey Wardens hunt dragons all the time because of archdemons? and blighted dragons, which have been a thing since Dragon Age Origins. But in comes Tash to say, dragons don't get blighted, they're too smart. Meanwhile, we're fighting blighted dragons throughout the game. So can we get Tash out of here? Like, just drop her off with the Lords of Fortune. They're barely relevant to the story anyway.
Suicide Squad, Justice League, Star Wars Outlaws. Yeah, exactly. All of these games.
And meanwhile, Baldur's Gate 3 is, inclusive to everybody. You can play a straight guy, you can play a gay guy, you can play whatever you want. You can play a serial killer who talks to somebody just to say, hello, I'm going to kill you now, and then kills them. Like, you can do that. The game doesn't stop you. And not only does the game not stop you, the game is made in such a way that it doesn't break just because you did that. You can literally kill every single NPC in the game, and it doesn't hurt the story whatsoever. It just gives you a different story.
In my opinion, were infected with unrelatable, weird social messaging that an average person wouldn't be able to appreciate or like. I think that's really the problem.
I think even people in the groups that were being pandered to, I think even those people didn't like those games because the message was just so bad. Because the vast majority of those people just want to be treated as normal people. They don't want to be treated as being special in any way, shape, or form. That's why most of them don't go around with painted hair. And when you make every representation of people in those groups as being painted-haired weirdos, full of piercings and tattoos and all sorts of trauma, nobody wants to hang out with those people. Nobody wants to see a story built around those characters. Nobody likes that.
It's a huge thing. And it's like, I don't see how you can, like, you have all of these points and they're making this perfect line, but you won't draw the line. You won't say, wow, what do all of these games have in common?
Garbage writing.
People are more pissed about Batman? Yeah, sure.
AAA titles from
Because, as I said, it was disrespectful to Batman, the way he was killed.
500-strong studios, 2024 show a revitalized hunger for a smaller, more independent spirit.
Yeah.
Arcade machine throwback UFO 50, the Metroidvania-esque Animal Well, poker roguelite Balatro, and text-based pixel art adventure The Crimson Diamond are just some of the games you'll see appearing again and again on these lists. Despite their numerous differences, they share one thing in common: a smaller, more refined experience that recalls earlier eras of gaming where
That's not what they all have in common. What they all have in common is that the people making the game and writing the story actually, truly were passionate about it.
marriages and mechanics and storytelling were key through technological craftiness, rather than
I
literal.
think this is actually true too, where a lot of games, the scope of them becomes so large that they just collapse under their own weight,
Also
basically.
that, yeah. Like, for example, how many video games, RPGs, open world stuff have you guys played where at the end of the day you get to the conclusion that it didn't need crafting, it didn't need mounts, it didn't need, any other 5 or 6 features that were damn near critical to the game's marketing. Like, you have a mount, you have crafting, you have this, you have that, and then you start playing the game and it's like, I wish this wasn't in the game because I don't like it. It doesn't belong. It's getting in my way, right?
If Elgar was close to Baldur's Gate 3, you could be able to call out Tash for her bullshit. Well, what you would have been able to do is you'd be able to kill her.
True.
The thing is that a lot of these games don't want to. They don't want to tell stories that have shades of gray because they're afraid of you rooting for the villain. That's the issue.
Country-sized game worlds. The nostalgia they create for older video game generations are central to the heart of their creation. They just want you to pick them up and have a good time. The slow but increasingly clear pivot of video game audiences to a potential indie renaissance is a clear message to publishers that if everything is bigger and bolder, who possibly has the time and energy to play more than 1 or 2 games each year?
And that's also the big issue too, especially with live service games, is that the amount of time that you need to invest to maintain relevance in a live service game is like a small job.
Yeah.
It's like you have to spend maybe 5 to 10 hours a day to maintain relevance and keep up with live.
Not that much, but like 1 or 2 hours a day, 5 to 10 hours a week maybe, to like be relevant. But yeah, not a day.
Service games. And because of that, guess what? A lot of people don't want to do it. Because like you're already invested. Like this is one of the big problems that I think a lot of gacha games have now, is that basically every gacha game is designed the exact same, and they all require a certain amount of time in order to do dailies and stuff like that. You can't play at your own pace. Yeah, exactly, right? You're basically on a conveyor belt whenever you play live service games, where you can't get too far behind and you can't get too far ahead. So it's not like, because a lot of people, the fact isn't that like in a normal person's life, they generally don't have exactly 45 minutes to play a video game every day. They have 4 to 5 minutes to play a video game, and then they have 4 to 5 hours on the weekend, maybe. So you have, it's not like people are going to want to log in to dedicate the same 15 minutes a day every single day in, right? Like, for example, like even I'm like this. There'll be days where I don't play any games, and there'll be other days.
When I was doing the Raid sponsorship for that 1 month, I would sometimes find myself like I barely had the time to log into the game, and I was doing just I was just playing video games and doing content at the time. Not even that much, I'll be honest. I've been doing a lot better lately, but like I wasn't even doing that much, and I still barely had the time to do it every single day. So I can only imagine what somebody with a real job and a real family has to worry about, and like trying to juggle that on top of everything. Like it's impossible. You can't do it. It doesn't
where
work
I
that
play
way.
video games for 8 hours, and that's real life, right? And so when you have these live service games that are built around these like retention mechanisms that keep you logging in every day, what you do is the actual casual players that play them, they can't get ahead on the days that they have off, and they fall behind on the days that they can't play.
Yeah.
And so you're losing people from both sides. And I think also like there's so many of them now competing for your same attention and money that it's kind of like streaming services.
I think that the very concept of dailies is a bad thing that is negative to casual players. Like it's a quote unquote catch up mechanic. It's meant to make it so you can catch back up, but it doesn't do that. All it does is make it so you have to play every single day or you lose.
Where it's like,
It's
well,
terrible.
I don't want to deal with streaming services anymore because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Tell
Just
you the
pirate.
definition.
All that shit is available online for free.
That's not to undercut the difficulty in getting those independent titles made, mind you. UFO 50's Mossmouth LLC team consisted of 6 developers working over many years, while both Animal Well and the Crimson Diamond share similar stories of being crafted by solo developers, Billy Basso and Julia Minamata respectively, over several years.
Yeah.
Even a smash hit like Lethal Company started life as a one-man band developer Zeekers learning to develop games on Roblox before expanding his knowledge. All of
it
these
was a
developers
Roblox
put everything
game,
they had over several years of their lives into creating these games, not in pursuit of money, but because of a passion. And this is why they don't need humongous worlds or 300 plus side quests to tick off. These games all feel like lean enjoyment machines.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of games that are like that. And I feel like that mouth-washing game is another really great example for it, is that graphics don't matter, style matters.
Yep.
Like the style of mouth-washing, the graphical style of it.
Yeah.
Like especially when you were pointing the gun at that guy at the end of it, absolute fucking cinema. Or like him dancing in front of that thing, or like there were a couple of other moments where it was just like the style of the game was incredible. So why is it a problem? Like, why do we keep focusing on having like real known actors play characters in video games?
Because if you can't get good writing, you have to make up for it somewhere else. The problem is, you can't make up for bad writing. You can't. There's no way to do it. If you do not get good writing, you need to get a different writer. If you can't get a good writer, get a different writer who is good. You need the writer to be good. Because if the story that you are experiencing in first person doesn't feel real, you're not going to enjoy yourself. And when I say feels real, I don't mean needs to feel like real life. It doesn't. It just needs to feel believable in the setting of the world. It's why, a character suddenly turning to you in a fantasy setting and saying, I'm non-binary. What the fuck does that mean? That's not a thing. They don't have that context. The use of the word melanin to describe skin color in a fantasy game, that doesn't make sense. They don't have that concept. They don't know what that is because they don't have the scientific basis to know what that is. So this whole idea of using modern language in a game that is meant to be set in a medieval fantasy, it breaks that reality. It makes the game worse. And even if you don't realize that that's what's doing that, you'll still know, ugh, I don't like that. Why don't I like that? I don't know. I don't feel like I'm supposed to not like that, so I'm just not going to talk about it. And that's a problem.
Like, is this really, like, outside of a Kojima game, like, is this really anything that people care about? No, nobody gives a shit about this. Metaphor graphics are really bad, but style is overbearing. Yeah, well, Metaphor has, like, a weird dichotomy because all of its, like, hand-drawn art is, in my opinion, some of the best art that there is.
Look at say Darkest Dungeon. I think, and I'd be surprised if more people didn't agree, but like Darkest Dungeon 1, all hand drawn, side scroller. Each of the animations was drawn by hand, and all of that. And then in Darkest Dungeon 2, it's all animated. It's all much more fluid. And if we're just talking about like quality, sure, Darkest Dungeon 2, quote unquote, looks better. But Darkest Dungeon 1 had an aesthetic, and that aesthetic was flawless. And they ruined it in Darkest Dungeon 2. I genuinely believe that the aesthetic of Darkest Dungeon 2 is outright inferior in every way to Darkest Dungeon 1.
It's fucking phenomenal.
Even though quality was better.
But the actual in-game graphics are fucking terrible. Yeah, like in terms of like the fidelity. It's a lot like
because graphical fidelity doesn't matter.
It's like From Software? Yeah, exactly, right?
It feels like the top end of the video game industry is currently faced with two paths to choose from. The first... It feels like the top end of the video game industry is currently faced with two paths...
Is that a dark-skinned version of the kid who replaces Hawkeye?
Has to choose from. The first is the status quo. It can continue to engorge on bigger budgets with impossibly open yet incredibly empty worlds filled with...
Oh, and another thing that is very bad about trying to go for really high graphical fidelity, if you have really high graphical fidelity and then your animations are bad, the animations get noticed really hard. Like, if you have a person who looks like me and then they move like this, like, you notice that they move wrong. But if they look like, just video game characters, like say the characters in Origins, right? The animations in Origins weren't amazing, but because neither was the graphical fidelity, it didn't create a problem. It didn't create a dissonance.
80 plus hours of content, about 10 of which have any meaning to its players, and or hopelessly pursue the live service train which left the station over 5 years ago with late passengers wondering why the money isn't rolling in anymore. These billion-dollar gambles could pay off, but it's seeming less and less likely every day. Conversely, companies could opt for a second path and take a page out of Julia Minamata, Billy Basso, and Zeeker's books, a wider breadth of projects, smaller in scope and scale, with a refined focus on gameplay mechanics, and perhaps a return to older styles of video games.
If instead of launching a game that's an open world ARPG with crafting and horse riding and all that stuff, and they make it like 300 hours and it's $70, instead of that, if they make 3 games, each one is $30 to $40 and each one is 100 hours long, and one is like an ARPG, and another is an open world RPG, and another is a, small scale crafting game, I think a lot of these studios would be far more successful.
Long dormant. Projects were developed...
I don't think that that's even what it is either, because like Dragon's Dogma 2 and Elden Ring and like a lot of games, like it's not like the new style of games are bad, it's just that the new games are bad.
That's also true.
Like, because all of these issues, like, think about what this guy's saying. Is Nintendo having this problem with Legend of Zelda? No. No, they're not. I mean, this is
Fucking love
these are
this game,
all
by the way, Loco
problems
Roco.
that are coming from people that are like just Western studios. These are all Western studio problems. Nintendo always make money? Yeah.
Oh yeah, because every
Developers
single
aren't
game
afraid
that Nintendo puts out is good and made by people who are passionate.
to make weirder choices and take some unexpected left turns lest they crash their
Yeah.
$400 million ship into a mixed to decent reception and lackluster sales. Maybe studios, and more importantly publishers and shareholders, can remember that we used to play video games because they were fun, not because of their bigger than last year maps carpeted by denser, higher resolution grass that you walk across to finish another piece of side content that pushes you just one digit closer to that 100% completion.
This wasn't
Yeah, I think that's a huge issue. A
Also, unrewarding side content in RPGs kills RPGs.
lot of people are tired of completionism mechanics being put in.
Like, y'all remember when in Final Fantasy VII, finishing all of the side content meant that you were going to get a weapon that was so overpowered you were going to one-shot the final boss, and that was going to be your reward. Your reward is becoming overpowered. The same thing happened to me in Kingdom Come Deliverance, except instead of like just getting an OP weapon, you become OP. Like it got to the point where like I finished all of the I finished pretty much all of the side content before I think it was before I even went into the forest to deal with that bandit camp, which then becomes your settlement for you to take care of. Like I did all of the side content before I did that. And the result of that is that battle turned into me running ahead of everybody else, murdering all the bandits by myself, and then waiting half an hour for the soldiers to, do their job. Like, I felt like I was rewarded for doing the side quests, and a lot of RPGs nowadays don't do that. Veilguard. Sorry, I had to cough before I wanted to say Veilguard.
Concord was Sony.
Also Inquisition.
Yeah,
Inquisition was fucking
Concord
terrible
was a
about
big
that.
mistake.
Yeah.
But I also think that Concord was Sony making a game for Western audiences.
No, it wasn't. Concord was Sony making a game for Twitter, and that was the problem.
I think that's what happened. And also, Sony
Twitter
owned
is
the
terrible
studio,
about
but
that
the
shit.
studio that made it was a Western studio.
plan.
No, it just wasn't the one we started with.
Speaking of which, congratulations, you've almost 100% of this video. What do you think needs changing in the games industry? Do you want bigger games or more games?
By the way,
To this video, what do you think needs changing in the games industry?
I hope whoever designed this Ash of War gets jumped. Terrible Ash of War. Ruined PvP.
Do you want bigger games or more games? Sound off in the comments below, and for everything gaming, games industry. Do you want bigger games or more
Is that a Metal Slug Golden Sun version?
games? Sound off in the comments below, and for everything gaming, you are already in the right place. IGN.
Golden Sun-like Metal Slug game.
I think that another really big toxic
think
thing
it
that
is Golden
gamers
Sun.
have
I don't
done
know.
is they've correlated the quality of a game to the amount of hours that they spend in the game, and the value of the game to the amount of hours they.
I think that's less the quality and more so the value. Like somebody who plays, if you paid $70 for a video game and you're a regular person, and then you get like 5 hours of content out of that video game and it's not that replayable, you're gonna get annoyed, right? You're gonna feel like you wasted that money. That's just a regular thing, right? People want their money's worth, and part of that comes from spending some amount of time on the game, right? And that's just reality, right? I don't feel comfortable spending $70 on anything short of like a large scale RPG, like say Final Fantasy VI. Like I paid $50 for the game on sale. I'm gonna play it. I said 16. I'm gonna play it eventually, but like it really does become a problem when these games come out and it's $70 and then it's 20 hours long and not that great. You know?
They spend in the game. And I don't think that's a good way to look at it. There are a lot of games that I've spent very few hours in, and it was some of the best time that I've ever had. But there are other games that I've spent a lot of hours in, and it wasn't really that great. And so it's because of COVID. Well, maybe, right? But like, I think that this has always been the way that people have seen things. So there's been games that I played a lot. I put a lot of hours in, but the game was pretty much dog shit.
Yeah.
And so does that really mean that, like, did I have more of a good time with Starfield, or did I have a better time with Undertale?
Undertale was goated, right? Like, Undertale's fucking goated.
I had a better time with Undertale, even though I only played it for 6 hours. So that's what I think. And I feel like also, again, this problem is manifest in Western game studios way more than Eastern game studios. Shadow of the Colossus is a 4 to 6 hour game. It's amazing. Yeah, I haven't played it myself, but
Me neither.
I'm not surprised. You're telling me $300 million mediocre games devoid of risk and bloated with microtransactions aren't a sustainable business model? Madness. Yeah, crazy. Imagine that.
Because, like, here's the thing. They could make the exact same game for $30 million and it would have been successful, right? Instead, it's ass. Like, by cutting down on a lot of the bullshit that they shoved into Veilguard, and by the way, I have no idea where they managed to shove $250 million worth of production value in Veilguard. It's not there. You do not have that many weapons, that much armor. Like, no, it doesn't exist. I don't give a shit. I don't care how much you think it was worth that money. It wasn't. You fucked up. Get your money back, BioWare. Seriously. But you compare that to games that have better graphics, or at least better visuals. I'm going to say better visuals instead of better graphics, because I think graphic fidelity in Veilguard is pretty good. But the visuals are terrible. The gameplay is meh. The story is garbage. And it's like, and the companions are fucking so bad with like 2 exceptions. I like Davrin and Emmerich, and everybody else could fucking genuinely just jump off a fucking cliff and be quiet while doing it. And I would be happier for it. I would have enjoyed the game more. But overall, spending that much money, you're essentially guaranteeing that your game is going to fail. Because even if you sell 1 million copies, you're not even going to be like half of the way through to actually making that game a commercial success. Which is why they're now saying that they need to increase the cost of the game. As if increasing the cost of the game will maintain your sales. It's not going to maintain your sales. You are simply going to sell less. You're going to make less money. If you go from $70 to, I think the value they talked about was like 90 or 100, and I think there's versions where it's like, oh, it's $200. Like, nobody's buying that shit except for like a handful of morons, and that's not enough for you to survive on. You need more than that, and you need to cut down on the cost of these fucking games. You cannot be making $300 million games. It needs to be 30 million, a tenth. Cut it down to a tenth. If your initial value estimate cracks $100 million, you fucked up. Do it again. Seriously, you're not going to make that money back ever. It's not happening.
And it's not AAA bubble has to burst. It's a live service bubble. No, it's the AAA bubble.
The AAA bubble has burst a while ago. Right now, what we're seeing is it was like one of those like really thick grease bubbles. So like it's popped and now it's going instead of popping, you're going poop. It's emptying itself out, right? It was a boil, not a bubble, right? It's just gonna drain. And as all of the idiots and all of the market execs who have no idea what they're talking about, and all the people who are just in it for the quick cash grab that doesn't really exist in a business model that is focused on art, it doesn't work that way. As all of that gets just washed away, we'll start getting better games from AAA companies eventually. But until then, there's more than enough good games to survive on. You're not going to run out of good games to play. But I've been talking for almost an hour and a half now in a 30-minute video. So to everybody saying that I'm a parasite and I don't make any of my own content, there's an hour's worth of my own goddamn content in this here video. So I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one and truce!